Welcome, guys. Today we're going to be talking about marriage in 2026, and due to the rise of social media, the social constructs, marriage is very different today than what it was back say 20, 30, 40 years ago. I was speaking to my friend today about this because I had recently seen a proposal on Facebook, and it was this particular location, and the woman being proposed to acted like all surprised that she was getting, the man went on the knee and proposed to her, and there just so happened to be like a camera crew and all this sort of stuff. And look, I just want to say, I'm not hating on anyone. I'm not judging anyone. I'm just highlighting, I guess, the differences between, proposals, engagement, marriage now versus what it was back then, back 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. So yeah, social constructs. So nowadays, marriage has more so become a show and a production, not so much like what the purpose or reason of what marriage is. So marriage in the Orthodox faith is when two people come together and become one, and they strive together to attain or attempt to attain salvation. That's actually the meaning or the purpose of marriage. The second is for reproduction. So they're the only two main reasons, is for salvation and for reproduction. But this is the main one, the salvation. Now you tell me, how many people do you know that are getting married to try and attain salvation? Not many. And so now, in 2026, proposals, the wedding day, it has all become a show of who can do the most extravagant or storybook romantic proposal, who can have the biggest wedding. And look, like I said, I'm not against celebrating a wedding by all means, but what I am saying is the focus now on the actual proposal and the wedding day versus the actual what the meaning of the marriage is has blown out of proportion nowadays. And you could even add here, marriage back in the day was also about duty. It wasn't so much about finding someone, some storybook like love story. It was more about duty. Back in the olden days, the family would marry off the daughter or the son to another family so they could, join forces, or because the other family had livestock or land and stuff like that. That's how, they used to have dowries. Nowadays, marriage has become this, Hollywood storybook kind of love fantasy. And I think the reason why there's so much divorce and so much disconnect now is because I think people assume that people have gone away from these, and because maybe when they get married, it is like a Hollywood movie, but then after 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, and the years start stacking up, people get disheartened and disconnected because their marriage isn't what they weren't sold on, because like I said, people nowadays get sold on this whole idea that their marriage is some, love story, some Hollywood movie. And after years, the marriage isn't like that. So then people just assume that the other person isn't for them because their marriage isn't some type of Hollywood movie. And this is where the ruling class gets a lot of people. But anyway, let's not digress. So proposals, wedding day. So a lot of people and, women tend to focus their whole, existence on proposals and their wedding day rather than the actual reason why they're getting married, rather than, focusing on the marriage itself. And they do this for a reason. Women nowadays, or since recorded history, their main goal, whether they express it or not, is for a man to commit to them. That's pretty much all women want. And nowadays, because of social media, when a man does commit to a woman and offer, a ring, they need to, plaster it all over social media so that their friends, families, and random people can see that they've achieved that milestone in their life. But like I said, now, like, the weddings and proposals have become more of a production rather than, sanctity between two people. The meaning behind marriage we've gone through, the pressure. So my friend was actually telling me now a lot of men tend to get pressured into getting married. Reason being is because if the man's missus has friends that have recently gotten engaged or recently, had their wedding, that particular woman will then pressure her man into, proposing to her. And my friend was saying that a lot of men nowadays are literally getting pressured into proposing to their girlfriend because they need to keep up with the social media, status. And so, when you think about it, marriage in 2026, I remember watching a Rich Cooper podcast over the weekend, and he was saying they did a consensus reform of a sort, asking young or married couples, how happy they are in their marriage. And it turns out that out of, say, 100 marriages, only 3 to 7 of those were actually happy in their marriage. So they were actually successful in their marriage, they were happy in their marriage. So now you have to think to yourself, as a man, if I told you there was a 93 to 97% chance of you failing at something, or let's just say it was a business deal or some type of property project or some type of business, and I said to you, John, you've worked 10, 15, 20 years, but if you do this, you've got a 93 to 97% chance of it not working out. Now look, I'm not saying don't get married, but I, for one, I want to find my person, don't get me wrong. But nowadays, to try and find someone you connect with and someone that understands you and someone that understands marriage, try to find someone unplugged from the system, from this matrix, very difficult. I'm not saying it's impossible, Because even Christ says what's impossible for man is possible with God. So don't give up hope. But I'm telling you now, these stats are concerning. And I, for myself, I'm single and I'm looking to, find my person. But sometimes when you look into this sort of stuff, it sort of makes you wonder, do I really want to be a part of this? Of course not so much there. This is the key. But more so all this stuff now, like, the modern marriages that don't last, unfortunately.